What's going on, everybody? And this is Sean Pierce Johnson bringing you this week's edition of Stompbox Saturday. And as you can tell by the instrument, we have a little bit of a different focus today. We're talking about bass pedals today. And as part of Boss Month, we're taking a look at the BC-1x, the bass compressor. Now, we've looked at some of the X series pedals before. It uses Boss's multi-dimensional processing engine to kind of take individual snapshots of different frequencies and the different notes that are going into it to output the optimum effect for each sort of set of frequencies. The cool thing with the bass comp is that we get a multi-band compressor pedal in a simple to use Stompbox package. Now, as a pro audio person, I know multi-band compression. Multi-band compression is confusing as all get out. So confusing, as a matter of fact, that I've maybe used it once in all my years. And yeah, it's just complicated. It doesn't make much sense, and sometimes you're left wondering, am I really doing anything with this? Well, thankfully, Boss has combined that effect with simple to use pedal controls that we're all familiar with. So let's take a look at them. The cool thing with the BC-1x is the four knobs are very simple. Level, which of course is going to set your output level of the compression effect, your release time, your compression ratio, and your compression threshold. But the really cool thing, and one of the things that I'm really excited to see on pedals these days, is you have a compression threshold LED readout. So just as an example, check this out. See those green lights? That is showing me how hard the compressor is actually working. And sometimes that visual cue is key in helping you find the right kind of compression sound that you're looking for. Now, I personally think that compression is one of the biggest tools that any guitar player or bass player should use. Almost more so for bass players. Punch, sustain, a little bit of clarity, it can do a whole host of different things for the bass. So let's check out some of those uses right now. One of the reasons I love using a compressor on bass is it adds a little bit of extra punch to parts that you really want to drive hard. Much like that riff to Fascination Street, there's plenty of other bass lines that require lots of punch. And sometimes without a compressor, that punch is a little lacking. I'll show you what I mean. Without the compressor, this is the sound that I got. Now, of course, Dee Dee Ramone wasn't really using a compressor, but there's just something about that sound that's just a little, it's just not quite doing it. Well, that's where the bass comp comes in. Using the same settings that I had at the top of the video, I find adds a hefty dose of sustain and just enough punch to make things stick out a little bit. Now, of course, that's not the only thing that we can do with the punchiness of a compressor. In fact, using a faster release time, and maybe a little bit less on the threshold, we get a little bit less of the effect. In fact, you'll actually see that readout on the LED screen. And we're gonna cut the level just a little bit and up the compression ratio. The compression ratio is going to set the amount of compression that occurs during a certain period of time. And what I find that works really well with this type of compression sound is something a little bit more rhythmic, maybe not so hard driving and, even 8th notes or 16th notes, but something where you got just a little bit of rhythm to it. Okay, bass players, you're really not gonna like what I'm about to say. Us guitar players can pick up a bass and get through a gig or session pretty easily, and with some pretty acceptable results. But we have a shortcoming. And that's, well, compared to you guys, our fingers are pretty weak. So, you know, we don't have the punch that you guys do, and we're not used to the thicker strings. But I think I've got a setting on the BC-1x that would solve that problem. I'll show you what I mean. First without the pedal, and then I'll kick it on. Well, I think that masks my shortcomings quite well. Recently, I added this beautiful instrument to my collection. It is a Squier, yes, I said Squier, vintage modified bass 6. If you're a bass player or a guitar player, I highly recommend you look into getting one of these. It is so much fun, and it has given me tons of new musical ideas, tons of new riffs. I couldn't ask for anything more. But maybe there is. The stock pickups are a little weak, and they don't quite give me the sound that I would hope to get. In fact, one of the new riffs that I've written, it needs a little bit of help. I'll show you what I mean. It sounds good, but it doesn't quite have the punch I want, and, well, the lower notes are a little bit more powerful than the higher notes, so we need a little bit of help. And that's where the BC-1x comes in handy. Now for this setting, I'm going for a long release time, so it's really catching everything. And I've gone with a higher compression ratio to really up the sustain and power. And I'm also going to get a fair amount of boost from this. And I find that, well, using this, it just sounds better. Well, there you have it, everybody. There is your look at the BC-1x bass compressor from Boss. A very welcome addition to their bass pedal line. And I'm really happy to see that Boss is starting to put more and more bass pedals out there. And maybe that's because bass players weren't really into using pedals. I mean, I don't know. I think they're great. It's good to see a lot of bass players out there wanting to use them as tone-shaping tools, because that's exactly what they are. And I really like this one. I'd even like to try it on guitar and see how it does. And I love the most about it is the attack. It immediately starts the compression effect. A lot of the other ones that I've come in contact to, and even ones that I love, they kind of let the note pass through and then they compress it and then they bring it back. This one, and maybe it's because of that multi-dimensional processing, it takes the effect right away and it starts doing its work right away. So I love it. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. Shoot me a comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for next week's episode of Stompbox Saturday. And until then, I'm Sean Pierce Johnson, and I wish you good tone and happy stomping. Cheers, everybody.